This is Today as It Happened. Good Monday evening to you. I'm Holly Furfer, here with your chronological look at the biggest events and stories of the day. From President Donald Trump's meeting with the Prime Minister of Australia to ongoing efforts to keep the ceasefire intact between Israel and Hamas. But first this morning, we took a look at new data on how Americans are feeling about the economy. New polling from the Associated Press reveals a deepening unease among Americans about the economy and job prospects. Meanwhile, most people report their finances are holding steady, although very few feel like they're getting ahead. Business and tech correspondent Maura Barrett dug through the results of this poll and joins us now from Denver. And Maura, if you would, walk us through the results. What are the biggest drivers behind this growing lack of confidence in really finding a good job?
Well, Holly, these poll results really just show the real feel sentiment of the economic factors that we've been analyzing over the last several months. The biggest headline is looking at the 47% of Americans who say that they are, quote, not very or not at all confident they could find a good job if they wanted to. The last time this question was asked was back in 2023 and was 10 points lower. And so that just shows kind of the increase in anxiety that we're seeing from job seekers, and not necessarily unemployed job seekers, right? But someone who might want to be bouncing and growing in their role, and that's part of who who is saying that they don't feel confident about being able to find those opportunities. The other part of it, obviously, as we've been talking about inflation, is the fact that even if salaries are going up, wage gains are going up, the real translation to what you're actually paying for things doesn't directly translate. It's been essentially flat. And so that's something that can contribute to the sense that new jobs aren't necessarily good jobs. And because people aren't feeling like they're making that much more money, these types of bills that you're seeing on your screen are what people are quantifying as major financial stressors. Groceries and electricity bills giving the most anxiety to people, according to this poll. Those electric bills going up across the country. I asked the Department of Energy Secretary a few weeks ago about this directly, given the increase we've seen when it comes to data centers and usage on the grid when it comes to AI production. And he effectively blamed the Democrats because they're canceling, the Department of Energy is canceling a lot of the former President Biden's renewable energy contracts. And he's saying that that set them back in terms of being able to supplement the electric grid for what people are going to need going forward. And that's why prices are high. Obviously, there's significant pushback in that sense right now, given that there are ways to protect the grid. But the other elements that people are anxious about is housing costs, healthcare, as well as gas prices. And so all of that is a direct reflection of all of the changes, the policy initiatives that we've been covering for the last several months, Holly.
And on the campaign trail, President Trump, he promised to bring back better jobs and revive the American economy. But what we're seeing here reflects a pretty different outcome. So how did we get to this point?
I think this situation perfectly exemplifies the difference between the macroeconomics and the micro, right? The campaign rhetoric often focuses on the macro, what the stock market looks like, what your 401k is performing at. And it has been doing pretty well in that sense. We've seen record highs in the last couple of weeks. There's been some significant drops as well. But those are the numbers that President Trump is focusing on. But then when you couple it with the layoff reports that we've seen, the lack of hiring, as well as the increased prices, a lot of businesses having to pass on President Trump's tariff costs onto their consumers, people are looking at their wallet and saying, I have less money to spend. And that is how the American people generally reflect how they're making their assessments of the economy, not necessarily looking at the bigger picture numbers the way the president is. And so that's something that definitely should be signaling a warning sign to Republicans, considering they had promised this economic boom. And all of this coming out amidst the government shutdown, obviously, as well, in tandem with the high inflation and hiring freezes that I mentioned. And so the overall consumer sentiment that we've been tracking over the last several months continues to decline. So all of these factors create that formula that creates this uncertainty. And so again, consumers, voters, the average person really needs to hear from their politicians what their pocketbook, what their wallet is going to look like, rather than the larger GDP headlines. And we're not seeing Republicans change their messaging on that.
All right, Scripps News business and tech correspondent Maura Barrett live for us. Thank you for that interesting update. New research shows feeding peanut products to babies has prevented about 60,000 children from developing life-threatening peanut allergies. A decade ago, medical guidance changed to recommend introducing peanuts to infants as early as 4 months old. This new study found peanut allergies in young children declined by more than 27% after those guidelines were first issued in 2015. The number jumped to more than 40% after those recommendations were expanded 2 years later. More than 2% of children in the U.S. have peanut allergies. France's justice minister has ordered an immediate reassessment of security at cultural sites nationwide after thieves targeted the Louvre Museum. The theft happened Sunday morning, just about 30 minutes after the museum opened, with visitors already inside. Thieves rode a basket lift up to the Louvre's facade, forced open a window, and smashed display cases before getting away with priceless jewels. Investigators say the entire thing lasted less than 8 minutes, with the crooks being inside the museum for less than 4 minutes. Coming up on Today As It Happened.
The important thing here is on what's realistic and what's practical, making sure that we're seeing a place that functions, as Jared Kushner described, making sure we're seeing a place where we can see peace and prosperity. That's the goal here.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. Let's check back in on our daily briefing of today's top stories. And Gaza's ceasefire faced its first major test Sunday as Israeli forces launched deadly strikes after Hamas militants allegedly killed 2 IDF soldiers. At least 36 Palestinians were killed, including children. Israeli officials temporarily halted aid deliveries, but say they will resume today. Scripps News international correspondent Blake Sifton is in Tel Aviv with the latest.
Both sides have reaffirmed their commitment to the ceasefire, but we still have seen more deadly violence in Gaza today. The Israeli military acknowledged shooting and killing at least 2 Palestinians that they say crossed the so-called yellow line. That's the line to which Israeli forces have withdrawn to during the ceasefire. We've heard from Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz, who has ordered the military to put up signs as well as actual yellow concrete blocks to demarcate the area that's a no-go zone for Palestinians, because many people simply don't know where they're allowed to go, and regularly they are fired on when they approach these lines. Now, meanwhile, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff as well as Jared Kushner have arrived in Israel today. They will reportedly meet Prime Minister Netanyahu to ensure that the ceasefire continues and to push for the implementation of Phase 2 of the wider peace plan. Their visit comes ahead of a planned and expected visit by Vice President J.D. Vance in the coming days. Now, when yesterday's violence was unfolding, the Trump administration apparently worked quite hard to make sure it did not spiral out of control. Hamas's leadership has said that they were not responsible for the attack in Rafah that started the violence yesterday, the attack that killed 2 Israeli soldiers. They say that they lost contact with their local forces many months ago and that they did not order that attack on Israeli soldiers. President Trump appeared to support that assertion. He said that the leadership wasn't involved, and he blamed it on rebels within Hamas. We also heard from Vice President Vance. He said that the ceasefire is going well. He downplayed the violence, and he said that the ceasefire would have hills and valleys. Now, as well, yesterday when the violence was unfolding, Israel closed all crossings into Gaza, and that meant no aid was entering the Strip. Yesterday, they said that aid would be held indefinitely, and we understood that we might not see aid entering Gaza for quite some time. But we also understand that the U.S. government pressured Israel on that front. And today, 2 major crossings have opened, and aid is entering Gaza once again. Blake Sifton, Scripps News Group, Tel Aviv.
And joining us now is Tommy Pigott, Principal Deputy Spokesperson from the State Department, to talk about that fragile peace process and more. Thank you so much for joining us today. The administration has worked diligently and with great effort on a peace deal in the Middle East. The State Department is warning that Hamas plans to violate the terms of the ceasefire, and Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner already meeting with the Prime Minister today, and the Vice President expected to fly later this week. So what do they all hope to accomplish with this visit, especially with Witkoff and Jared Kushner today?
Well, look, what we're seeing is every single day, this entire administration working to implement the president's peace plan, seeing this global coalition that the president brought together to implement this plan, and every single day working to add this chance for long-term peace and prosperity. As the president said just yesterday, he views the ceasefire still in place. And every single day we're working to build on this ceasefire, to build on this peace plan, implement this peace plan, and see that long-term chance for peace and prosperity.
And so at the end of the administration's 20-point plan for peace, what will Gaza look like? Who will govern? Where will the economic support come from? What do you see?
Well, as Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff have described, they're in the process of discussing many of these things now. But the important thing here is on what's realistic and what's practical, making sure that we're seeing a place that functions, as Jared Kushner described, making sure we're seeing a place where we can see peace and prosperity. That's the goal here. That's what we're seeing this conversation from. And I think here, again, it's important to recognize that global coalition that the president has brought together. And only President Trump could have brought together this coalition to see this peace plan into action, to see this chance at long-term peace and prosperity for the people of Gaza, the people of Israel, and for people of the entire region.
Is there a concern that this is so fragile, though, that one wrong move could see the whole thing crumble?
Well, as Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff have described, no one is downplaying how complex this is. No one is downplaying how hard this is. No one is downplaying the leadership that we have seen from President Trump and others in terms of getting this peace plan into place. So we're working every single day to see this peace plan be implemented, to make sure that we're getting aid to the people that need it, to make sure that we're seeing progress towards a technocratic government or technocratic group that would be governing this area. The fact that we're seeing this peace plan be worked towards and being implemented every single day from this administration.
And the president now focused on the war in Ukraine as he plans to meet with President Putin in Hungary. Will the president include President Zelensky in this meeting as well? And there's been much criticism that the president has been waffling on his plans, first saying he would supply Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles and then backing down after a call with President Putin. He recently said Russia needs to retreat from all Ukrainian territory, and then after that phone call saying now maybe Russia should keep the Donbas region that they badly want. So a lot of waffling. So where does the administration stand today?
Well, I reject that characterization. Our goal when it comes to this conflict has been clear from the beginning: to end the bloodshed, to end the conflict, to stop the carnage. That has been the president's goal from the beginning of this, a war that he inherited, that did not start on his watch, but he is determined to end, to stop the bloodshed, so that, as the president said, people can go home, live their lives, live prosperous lives. And the president is dedicated to that process to see a long and enduring peace. The president has been crystal clear from the beginning of this administration. And as Steve Witkoff described just recently, there is an infectious desire to be part of peace agreements. We're seeing many peace agreements around the world being brokered by President Trump. And now there's an infectious desire to be a part of that. The peace and prosperity that is possible because of the leadership of President Trump and because of people coming together to solve these conflicts and instead focus on building a better future.
So will he supply Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles?
Look, I'm not going to get ahead of the president. The president has spoken to so many different parts of this conflict. I'm not going to get ahead of the president on this. Ultimately, his fundamental goal is to stop the carnage and the bloodshed. The president has been very clear on that.
And how does he feel about the Donbas region? And does he believe that Russia should retreat out of the areas of Ukraine that they now occupy? Or does he think there's some room for negotiation on both sides? And will he include Zelensky in these talks with President Putin in Hungary?
Well, look, we just saw the president meeting with President Zelensky. We saw the president truth about this upcoming meeting with President Putin. Ultimately, again, this is about a president that is working to bring the sides to the table, working to bring the sides to the table so that people can go home and be with their families, that we can stop the carnage, stop the bloodshed, the worst bloodshed we've seen in Europe since the end of World War II. And this is not a war, again, that the president, this is not a war that started on the president's watch. It's a war that he inherited, and yet he's determined to see it come to an end in a way that is long and enduring, that sees that long and enduring peace, that allows people to go home, be with their families, be prosperous, build better lives, peace and prosperity. The president is a builder. That is what he's focused on creating here.
All right, let me ask you about the administration going after alleged drug smugglers. We've seen many boats being blown up in the Caribbean that they say are running drugs. Now officials from Colombia and other countries are claiming that the U.S. is indiscriminately killing fishermen, innocent people. So the question is, why not capture those boats, arrest those alleged criminals, show people the drugs? Why provoke international hostilities?
Well, first of all, the president has been very clear that we are going to stop the flow of deadly drugs coming into our country. The leading cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 45 are overdoses, driven in large part by illegal fentanyl coming across the border and poisoning our communities. The president has said enough. And what we're actually seeing from across our region is an enthusiasm to partner with us. This issue being so connected to the border crossing, stopping illegal mass migration, combating narco-terrorists. And across our region, countries face many of the same challenges we do, the destabilizing effects of narco-terrorists, the destabilizing effects of illegal mass migration. And we are seeing an enthusiasm to combat these groups, from designating them as foreign terrorist organizations, ending illegal immigration. The president has promised to stop the flow of deadly drugs into our country and secure our border, and that is a promise he is keeping.
So would it make sense, though, to then capture those boats, confiscate the drugs, and arrest those alleged drug smugglers rather than blowing up boats where other countries can make claims they were fishermen, they were innocents?
Look, both President Trump and Secretary Rubio have spoken extensively to this. It comes to the fundamental principle that we are going to stop the flow of deadly drugs into our country, combat the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 45. The president talking about how tens of thousands of Americans could be poisoned by the drugs that are flowing each and every time we see one of these incidences. So what we're talking about here is a president determined to stop the flow of deadly drugs into our country, and we're seeing across the administration an all-of-government approach to do just that.
And before I let you go, I want to talk about the Trump administration. They've authorized a $20 billion financial lifeline for Argentina as that country faces an economic crisis. And we know Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent trying to secure another $20 billion through private banks, sovereign wealth funds. So first of all, why are we bailing them out? And we know this isn't going to fix their economy. They're not a systematic country. In other words, they don't have a negative effect on surrounding economies. So why are we pouring so much money into Argentina?
Look, the president is a deal maker. We saw the president of Argentina just here recently. We saw those conversations. The president is a deal maker. And when it comes to trade, no one can deny that the president is putting America first at every single instance, that he is focused, when you look across the board, on rebalancing trade, putting the American worker first, lowering costs for the American people. We have seen the president take unprecedented action to do just that. It's already yielding results across the world. No one can deny the president is putting the American worker, the American people first when it comes to trade.
And why is it that we are focusing on Argentina? Is there something that the U.S. will benefit from it in his deal making?
Well, look, in your earlier report, you discussed what the deal was. I would refer to Treasury for more details on those deals as opposed to my perch here at the State Department. But what I can definitely say is the president is a deal maker. The president is always looking for the best deal for the American people. And also, it's not just one country. We are seeing countries from around the world coming to the United States to rebalance our trade agreements. We've already seen so many different announcements of trade agreements that have been made under President Trump in his second term. We're seeing continued momentum towards trade discussions, and the president has been clear. He is putting the American people first when it comes to trade.
Tommy Pigott, Principal Deputy Spokesperson from the State Department. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please come back to Scripps News.
Thanks for having me on.
Up next on Today As It Happened.
No King's Day is an awesome rally for people from all walks of life, for people that are different, to come together and stand for one common cause: America, democracy, peace, and justice.
You're watching Today As It Happened. This is Scripps News rundown of the biggest events and stories of the day. So let's get to it.
Thousands taking to the streets nationwide yesterday, part of those No Kings demonstrations. Crowds packing Times Square, Boston, Atlanta, Chicago, protesting what they call the government's drift toward authoritarianism under President Trump. Scripps News Washington correspondent Stephanie Liebergan says organizers say their numbers totaled more than 7 million people.
Organizers from Saturday's No Kings protest say it was one of the largest single-day nationwide demonstrations in U.S. history. They estimate more than 7 million people attended more than 2,700 events in all 50 states on Saturday. And all of these protesters showing up to push back against what they view as an abuse of power by President Trump and his administration. Among the things they are frustrated by: the immigration enforcement. They are frustrated by the deployment of the National Guard to a handful of cities. They are upset about the reductions in the government workforce. And a number of people believing that they feel like President Trump is focused on settling personal vendettas and not really working for the American people.
The threat against our First Amendment rights, that they're now calling us terrorists for exercising our First Amendment rights, the fact he's going after his political opponents and he's standing unopposed. That's my fear, is that there's no one opposing him except the people that come out like this.
No King's Day is an awesome rally for people from all walks of life, for people that are different, to come together and stand for one common cause: America, democracy, peace, and justice.
Ahead of Saturday, organizers really pressed the importance of it being a peaceful protest, and they certainly were successful in that effort. Major cities in the U.S., New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C., none of them reported arrest after or during Saturday's protests. Now, all of this was put together by a coalition of nearly 300 organizations that now have two major demonstrations under their belt. First in June and then on Saturday this past weekend. And this No Kings coalition is promising more action and more resistance to come. Stephanie Liebergan, Scripps News Group, Washington.
Coming up on Today As It Happened, President Donald Trump hosted Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese at the White House on Monday.
Australians love America, and I think Americans kind of like Australia too.
Sure, we do.
Scripps News correspondent Haley Bull gave us the rundown of their bilateral meeting, so stay with us for her reporting right after the break. We're so glad you're back with Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer, here with your daily rundown of today's top stories.
A group of city health leaders in the U.S. is speaking out in support of vaccines. The Big Cities Health Coalition saying falling vaccination rates are leading to new outbreaks of measles and polio. The group also accuses some federal officials of spreading false claims and limiting access to vaccines. City health directors say they are now stepping up to protect towns and cities as trust in federal health agencies is declining. The Supreme Court says they will consider whether people who smoke marijuana can legally own guns. Trump administration asking the justices to revive the issue. The case involves a Texas man charged with a felony for allegedly having a gun while being a regular pot user. The lower court striking down that law. The Justice Department argues it is valid because regular drug users are a threat to public safety. The man's lawyer saying the law puts millions of people at risk from technical violations. At least 20% of Americans have tried marijuana. What caused this cargo plane to skid off the runway in Hong Kong? It happened earlier this morning. The Boeing 747 crashing into a security patrol car before both fell into the sea. 2 security workers in the car were killed. The plane's 4 crew members were unhurt after being rescued from the plane's open door. The plane broke into 2 parts and was floating in the sea. One of 3 runways at Hong Kong's airport is still closed. Flights are using the other 2. Amazon saying most of its web services are back online, an outage disrupting activity around the world this morning. Still no word on what caused the outage. The first signs of trouble reported this morning around 3 a.m. Eastern Time. 3 hours later, Amazon said it was seeing recovery across most affected services. Amazon Web Services provides remote computing to governments, universities, and companies worldwide, including some of the biggest names in commerce like McDonald's.
Did an ambassador say something bad about it? Don't tell me. I don't. Where is he? Is he still working for you?
Yeah.
You said bad?
Before I took this position, Mr. President.
I don't like you either. I don't, and I probably never will. Go ahead.
President Trump hosting Australian Prime Minister Albanese at the White House today. A bilateral meeting between both nations. It is the first time the Australian Prime Minister has met with President Trump at the White House. It comes as the Trump administration is working with Australia on key issues to counter China in the Indo-Pacific region. Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull joins us live now. And Haley, what did the 2 presidents have to say about our meeting with our Australian allies?
Yeah, Del, this is a significant meeting in which leaders focused on trade and defense partnerships. Both countries, especially Australia, is seeing this as a chance to deepen cooperative ties. The leaders announcing during this visit and signing at the same time a critical minerals and rare earths agreement. Australia's Prime Minister Albanese called it an $8.5 billion pipeline, including joint activities, U.S. investments in Australian processing, and Australia's projects it undertakes, including one with the U.S. and Japan. The framework we received within the last couple hours here, Del, calls specifically for each country to provide at least $1 billion in financing projects. Among a number of details, the framework details mobilizing government and private sector support and efforts to jointly find projects to fill gaps in supply chains. This, of course, comes at a significant time between the U.S. and China's trade relations, a big tension there as China has sought to enact more sweeping export controls on critical minerals and rare earths, including the processing of that. It also comes amidst defense concerns as each country is looking to deepen that. Well, AUKUS, that is a partnership between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the U.S. that promises in part nuclear-powered submarines by 2030s, is under review in the Trump administration. President Trump appeared to vocally give support to the project initially started under the previous Biden administration. Trump saying that they are expediting the submarines, promising those. In addition to that, the naval chief, who was at the table during this meeting, said that they are trying to improve what he described as the framework and clarify what he called ambiguity. President Trump saying this about the partnership.
It was made a while ago, and nobody did anything about it, and it was going too slowly. We do actually have a lot of submarines. We have the best submarines in the world, anywhere in the world, and we're building a few more currently under construction. And now we're starting, we have it all set. With Anthony, we've worked on this long and hard, and we're starting that process right now, and I think it's really moving along very rapidly, very well.
And Del, President Trump agreed that he does see AUKUS as a deterrent to China, but at the same time said he doesn't think they will need it, as he expressed confidence in the relationship with China. He indicated he still intends to meet with President Xi Jinping in South Korea over the coming weeks, and still maintained that threat of an additional 100% tariff on China, as China has threatened those more stringent export controls, Del.
Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull live for us. Haley, as always, we thank you.
Coming up on Today As It Happened, it's day 20 of the federal government shutdown.
We enter another week of Donald Trump's government shutdown.
20 days since the Democrats recklessly shut down the United States government.
Stay with us for more from Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed as the shutdown becomes the third longest in U.S. history. That's right after the break. Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfur. All right, let's jump right back into our rundown of the top stories of the day.
Weight loss drugs aren't just making people lighter and smaller, they're also changing how people shop. A new analysis of consumer behavior from PricewaterhouseCoopers suggesting that those GLP-1 medications are leading people to spend less on groceries and choose healthier options. They're also saying people are spending less on fast food, but spending more on full-service restaurants. Consumers are buying more clothes. Some of that is to replace clothes that no longer fit. It also suggests that people are feeling more and more confident. The Senate is back in session today after their long weekend. They're set to vote on a short-term funding bill. This marks the 11th time, and everyone knows it is not going to pass. So here we are, day 20 of the government shutdown, and the impact is now being felt across all branches of government. Our Deputy Political Director, Joe St. George, takes a look at the impact on the courts.
It is day 20 of the federal government shutdown, and this shutdown is now the third longest in American history, with each week brings new impacts, including new challenges for America's judiciary. On Monday, the Supreme Court begins shutdown procedures, as do federal courts across the country. Up until this point, the federal judiciary was relying on existing funds to avoid impacts. Those funds ran out over the weekend. A memo from the U.S. courts outlines what happens next. Until the ongoing lapse in government funding is resolved, federal courts will maintain limited operations necessary to perform the judiciary's constitutional functions. Federal judges will continue to serve in accordance with the Constitution, but court staff may only perform certain accepted activities. At the U.S. Supreme Court, oral arguments and decisions will still happen, but the building will be closed to tourists for the time being. As far as how this shutdown will impact the courts where you live, the memo goes on to say, quote, individual courts will determine which cases will continue on schedule and which may be delayed. The jury program is funded by money not affected by the appropriations lapse and will continue to operate. Jurors should follow instructions from courts and report to courthouses as directed. In Washington over the weekend, no resolution of the shutdown appeared to be imminent, with both sides repeating familiar positions. Democrats want healthcare policy changes to prevent premium increases. Republicans want the government opened first. Federal workers will miss another paycheck on Friday if the government shutdown continues. For many federal workers, this will be their first full paycheck missed. Joe St. George, Scripps News Group, Washington.
We enter another week of Donald Trump's government shutdown, and Republicans seem happy not to work, happy not to negotiate, happy to let healthcare premiums spike for over 20 million working and middle-class Americans.
Some lawmakers are predicting this could become the longest in history, which would be 35 days. And while the Senate is in session today, neither party believes that today's vote is more than just going through the motions. Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed is live on Capitol Hill. Nate, the situation, here we go again. Any change in the status as we are now entering into the fourth weekend of the shutdown?
Yeah, you summed it up pretty well there, Del. At this point, there really is no change. And look, Republicans over on the House side have been trying to openly woo their Democratic colleagues on the Senate side to vote in favor of this government funding bill, which Democrats said has really nothing for them in the means of trying to extend these Affordable Care Act premiums, which expire at the end of this year. Now, if they do expire, we could see millions of people losing their health insurance over the next decade. A lot of concern from Democrats about that oncoming cliff of these rising health care prices that we could see. Congressman Andy Harris, the Republican from Maryland, and the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, the ultra-conservative group of House Republicans, saying this morning alongside Speaker Johnson.
The question before us now is simple. Will at least 5 Senate Democrats relent and break from their party's left-wing fringe and vote to reopen the government today? House Republicans have already done their job. The only thing standing between America and a reopened government is a handful of Senate Democrats too afraid of their activist base to do the right thing.
So, Del, we find ourselves in what I've been calling this legislative Groundhog Day here on Capitol Hill. Democrats holding out hope that House Speaker Mike Johnson, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, and crucially, President Donald Trump will enter into some negotiation to extend these Affordable Care Act tax credits, give Democrats some assurances when they vote to reopen the government. At this point, that has not been the case. Democrats holding out hope for that. Republicans digging in their heels saying, look, this shutdown is on the Democrats.
Nate, it's fascinating the criticism is coming from the House side of the aisle. The House has been out now for a full month. Any chance that is going to change anytime soon?
Look, there's no indication. And while the House remains out, House Speaker Mike Johnson keeping members in their home districts and refusing, crucially, to swear in Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva, the Democrat from Arizona. She's replacing her father, Raul Grijalva, who died in office, many-term member of the House of Representatives, at one point chaired the House Progressive Caucus. The Congresswoman-elect posting last week that she finally got access to her office here on Capitol Hill, even though she has not yet been sworn in. House Speaker Mike Johnson then responding today during his press conference, saying that even though she's in her office, she should be taking constituent calls. That being said, she's still not a sworn-in member of Congress. He's refused to swear her in until the Senate passes this government funding bill. The House has now remained out for, as you noted, a month. Take a listen.
I will administer the oath to her, I hope on the first day we come back, legislative session. I'm willing and anxious to do that. In the meantime, instead of doing TikTok videos, she should be serving her constituents. I'm told they're going to her office today because she made a TikTok video saying that she couldn't use her computers. Well, she'll be able to use her computers now. Okay, she has 16 staffers. They need to be taking calls.
And again, not clear what the Congresswoman-elect can do in terms of in terms of constituent services for her constituents in southern Arizona, simply because she is not yet a sworn-in member of Congress. It's not clear if she's able to hire staff. There's a lot more questions than answers about what you can do as a not sworn-in member of the House of Representatives. The Congresswoman-elect at this point effectively in limbo before the Senate votes on this government funding bill. Again, House Speaker Mike Johnson has kept the House of Representatives out of D.C. for the past month. The criticism from Democrats, the reason he's not swearing in the Congresswoman-elect is he's worried about the possibility that she'll sign on, she said she will, to this discharge petition and release the Epstein files. Again, that would be Speaker Johnson, possibly a bad look for Speaker Johnson. A lot of questions about the kind of limbo she finds herself in, her and, of course, her 700,000+ constituents in her district in Arizona.
Nate, final question before I let you go. Usually when House members go back to their congressional districts, they hold meetings, they hold town halls. Are we seeing town halls taking place during this period when House members are getting paid but not working versus the town halls that we saw earlier this year when people seem to be very upset?
We're seeing some, not many, a lot of teletown halls, which just kind of provide a bit less of an opportunity for there to be these viral moments of, members of Congress being confronted by their constituents. But, to some extent, it's probably a bit difficult to plan your life if you're a member of Congress. And again, I'm not taking anyone's side here, Del, but to be clear, House Speaker Mike Johnson hasn't been totally clear with the schedule until recently. Basically, he said that the House of Representatives is on 48 hours notice to return to Washington, D.C. when the Senate passes this government funding bill. That makes it hard to schedule things, constituent visits, family time away, anything like that, if you're constantly on 48 hours notice. And furthermore, really no one knows how long this shutdown is going to go. At this point, we're not seeing a whole lot of town hall meetings. Part of the reason, though, part of the rationale to send them home, certainly to try and keep up that pressure on some of the Democratic members of the House of Representatives. Part of the reason that the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, has been sending Democrats home every single weekend and Republicans to, again, try and keep up the pressure on those Democratic senators to try and reopen the government.
That is why you are our congressional correspondent, Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed, live on Capitol Hill. Nate, as always, thanks for keeping us up to date.
Up next on Today's It Happened.
The Trump administration is shifting its tariff policies. I'm Katie Tubman. Coming up, the changes it's made to ensure tariffs stay in place, even amid legal challenges, plus why some goods have been exempted.
And later,
what we've learned is that a hunting stand was found in these trees right over here, and it is right across a busy street from the Palm Beach International Airport, where Air Force One parks.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened, Scripps News debrief of our top stories of the day. So let's jump right back in.
Colombia is recalling its ambassador to the United States. This move in response to a tense back and forth between both countries. It all began when President Trump fired on what it called drug boats from Venezuela. Colombia's President Gustavo Petro saying the U.S. actually killed one of its citizens, saying that fisherman was killed back on September 16th. President Trump responded by calling Petro, quote, an illegal drug dealer and a lunatic. President Trump also says he's going to impose new tariffs on Colombia. That move is the latest in his efforts to reshape trade policy, but the administration has shifted some of its tariff strategy after those tariffs were challenged in the courts. Scripps News national correspondent Katie Tubman is live for us in New York. She has more on those new tariffs. Katie, what are you finding out?
Well, Del, as you mentioned right there, President Trump says he'll hit Colombia with new tariffs, and the move was sparked by the president's accusation that Colombia's president is encouraging drug production. And this move actually sparks the latest update in the Trump administration's tariff policies, which have shifted and also has been modified many times since first rolling out in April. The Trump administration's tariff policies continuing to shift.
I think there's a lot of adaptation about how they're implemented and where they're implemented.
The White House last month exempting dozens of products from its reciprocal tariffs. The exemption list now includes some lumber products and certain metals. The White House saying the exempted goods are largely unavailable natural resources.
That there are certain products that just aren't made here in the United States and that are needed for as inputs into manufacturing or production.
Everett Eisenstadt was the deputy director of the National Economic Council during President Trump's first term. He says the president has also shown a willingness to adjust tariffs based on economic commitments from other countries to invest in the U.S. Meanwhile, the White House is using another trade law, Section 232, to expand some tariffs. On Friday, the president using that to add 25% tariffs on the import of some trucks and truck parts and a 10% tariff on imported buses. Many businesses up to this point have eaten the cost for tariffs, but there are concerns that won't last.
What we've seen so far is that businesses have by and large tried their best not to pass on tariff costs. They've been waiting to see how Trump's trade policy will shake out before making those price hikes on consumers. But that's getting more difficult as the days go on.
Now, Del, these policy shifts also come ahead of a Supreme Court hearing in early November on President Trump's power to impose these sweeping global tariffs. And the court could force the administration to pay back those levies if it loses. Del?
Scripps News national correspondent Katia Tubman live for us in New York City. Katia, thank you very much. Was it an attempted assassination? The FBI is now looking into a suspicious hunting stand in West Palm Beach. That hunting stand had a direct line of sight to Air Force One. The Secret Service says they found it last Thursday. Dave Borman from Scripps News Group in West Palm Beach is live for us. And Dave, what have you learned?
Well, right now what we've learned is that hunting stand was found in these trees right over here. It's easily accessible near a canal where there's as you can see, a pretty wide walkway. And it is right across a busy street from the Palm Beach International Airport, where Air Force One parks. The stand, called a potential threat to the president, has likely been removed. The tree area sits behind the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office's Forensic Center and the U.S. Army Reserves, both on Gun Club Road. I pressed these two agencies for answers about the security concern. Dave Bowman, WPTV. Both agencies did not return my request for information. I also pressed the FBI and Secret Service. Those agencies released no new information, but one part of the puzzle could soon be solved. My investigation finds how the tree that held the stand may yield crucial clues.
Damaged bark, broken branches, bent twigs.
Clues forensic arborist Joe Samnick says could help determine when the tree stand was put up. Pretty easy to say recent and not recent, correct?
Yes.
How so?
Oh, that's by the damage and how the tree reacts to it. That's easy peasy. That timeline's not a problem.
And of course, we were pressing for information today from all these agencies, expecting at least some new information. But right now, the details of the investigation, including who might have done it, when the stand was put up, and why, remains something that right now either investigators don't know or they're not telling us. Del?
Dave Bowman from our Scripps News Group in West Palm Beach. Dave, as always, we thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us this evening for Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. We hope you have a great Monday night.